Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something really thought-provoking. We're unpacking a YouTube video. It's titled "North Africans Are Not Africans: Centering Blackness in Pan-Africanism" by a creator called Hammer. Now, our mission here, just to be clear, isn't about taking sides or endorsing anything. It's really about digging into the arguments, the claims, the perspectives in this specific video. We want to extract the core ideas so you walk away understanding what this particular viewpoint is all about.
Absolutely. And this video, it really touches on some fundamental things. Identity, history, huge continental movements. What's interesting is seeing how this one specific perspective tries to, well, redefine how we traditionally understand what African means using a very particular framework.
Okay, so let's get right to the core argument. The creator, Hammer, starts with a pretty direct question, basically asking, are North Africans black, and should they even be considered black?
Yeah, it's a loaded question right off the bat.
Totally. And the main point the video makes is that within the context of Pan-Africanism as they define it, North Africans are not really African. The reasoning given, it's that they aren't indigenous to the continent. The video describes them mostly as descendants of people from the Middle East or the Arabian Peninsula.
And that framing of Pan-Africanism is crucial here. Usually Pan-Africanism is seen as this broad umbrella uniting people of African descent everywhere. But this video narrows it right down. It says the movement is, and this is their phrase, centered around blackness, specifically focusing on indigenous sub-Saharan Africans. So that's the lens.
Right, and that leads to a really striking comparison they make. The video draws this direct analogy between North Africans and white Americans in North America.
Oh yeah, that one stands out.
It does. The idea presented is, just like white Americans might be seen as non-indigenous occupiers in North America, North Africans are framed the same way for what the video calls the North African Strip. In fact, the presenter argues, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, that someone like a black person from Jamaica or even a black American is, quote, way more African than a North African will ever be. Because, in this view, their ancestry traces back to indigenous black populations. It's quite a claim.
It is. And it leads to a very strict definition within the video's logic.
Yeah.
Essentially, if you are not phenotypically black, you are not African. At least not in the specific Pan-African context they're pushing. Phenotypically black, meaning, having the physical features typically associated with sub-Saharan Africans.
So it's a very race-based definition of continental identity they're putting forward.
Exactly. That underpins everything else.
Now, the video also brings up self-identification. It claims North Africans, who it often just calls Arabs, get triggered when told they aren't African, but then it alleges that among themselves, they primarily identify as Arabs.
Right, that's a key piece of their argument, this supposed disconnect.
And they use the World Cup as an example. Remember when Morocco did so well? The video points out that some Moroccan players said their wins were for the Arab world. The presenter says this triggered black Africans, and for them, proved the point that Moroccans see themselves as Arabs, not African in that sense.
So the video interprets that statement as clear evidence of a separate identity, placing it sort of outside or even counter to a Pan-African one as they define it.
Yeah. And there's another story brought up to support this. It talks about Morocco supposedly trying to join the European Union years ago. The video claims they were turned down, with the EU basically saying, you guys aren't white. And then later, Morocco joined the African Union. The creator sees this sequence of events as Morocco playing both sides, like only seeking affiliation with the AU after being rejected elsewhere.
Interesting interpretation. So the video uses that narrative to suggest North Africans, or at least Morocco in this case, don't really want anything to do with most black Africans, and that they're trying to be either white or be experienced in the other world, as the video puts it. It frames it as strategy, not solidarity.
Exactly. And it even loops back to appearance, stating that North Africans physically resemble people from the Middle East because, well, the video says their ancestors came from there.
So tying physical appearance directly back to the non-indigenous argument.
Right. Okay. So with that groundwork laid, the video then starts categorizing. It breaks down different regions, labeling countries as either Arab or African based on its own system. It lists Algeria, Morocco, Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, and Western Sahara pretty clearly as majority Arab states.
Straightforward enough within their logic. But then it acknowledges things get a bit more complicated, particularly with Mauritania, Sudan, and the Horn of Africa, Somalia, Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia.
Yeah, let's unpack those. What does it say about Mauritania?
It's presented as mixed. Originally a black majority, but the video claims it was colonized by Arabs who now dominate and have subjugated the black population. So despite the history, it gets classified as Arab and part of the Arab League in this view.
Okay. And Sudan, that sounds complex too.
Very. The video talks about a big racial split, North versus South. It lays out three groups it identifies. First, Arabized blacks. These are people who look phenotypically black, but self-identify as Arab, maybe due to culture or language.
Okay.
Second, Black Muslims, who identify primarily as Black Africans, even though they practice Islam. And third, Black Christians traditionalists, also identifying as Black first.
And the video connects this to conflict.
It does. It claims the Arabized blacks were put in power and tried to Arabize the entire country, which according to the video led to South Sudan breaking away and also the Darfur genocide. So it uses Sudan to illustrate this internal conflict based on racial and cultural identity lines.
Got it. What about Somalia and Djibouti?
They're put in the Arabic camp. The video describes them as black folks that have mixed with Arabs, but claims they primarily identify as Arabs, despite what it calls strong Negro features.
So self-identification trumps phenotype again in that case, according to the video.
Seems like it for those two. But then you get Eritrea and Ethiopia.
Ah, the outliers.
Exactly. The video says they're also mixed, with Arabic influence, and might look similar to people in North Sudan, Djibouti, or Somalia. But it claims many Ethiopians, many Eritreans will identify more on the black side. So based on that alleged self-identification, they get placed in the black indigenous category, unlike Somalia and Djibouti.
Interesting how self-identity is used differently depending on the country in this framework.
It is. And there's one more piece the video throws in to bolster the non-indigenous argument for North Africa, the Barbary slave trade.
Right, what's the point made there?
The video asserts that over 3 million Europeans were sent to North Africa as slaves between the 1400s and late 1800s. The implication seems to be, look, here's another significant non-African population group contributing to the North African mix. It's used to counter narratives connecting modern North Africans directly to ancient groups like Egyptians or Moors, suggesting a more recent non-indigenous European element too.
Okay, so it's another layer to that argument against indigenous African identity for North Africans.
Precisely.
So if we pull it all together, the video basically creates an exclusion list from its definition of African and Pan-African.
Okay.
This list includes Mauritania, Western Sahara, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Sudan, Somalia, and Djibouti. Is that right?
That's the list presented, yeah. Leaving primarily sub-Saharan Africa plus Ethiopia and Eritrea as the exceptions based on their supposed self-identification. And the concluding statement is really blunt about it.
What does it say?
It says the African identity and the Pan-African identity will only be reserved for those, the sort of black indigenous sub-Saharan African. It's very definitive.
Wow. So a complete redefinition. And the video suggests any current cooperation, say, within the African Union with those excluded countries is purely political.
Pretty much. The video argues it's just for political reasons and claims that on the ground and in reality, we know that you guys are not really African. And the ultimate motivation stated throughout is this idea of reclaiming identity. Phrases like needing to claim the continent back, asserting that black people are the indigenous this continent. That's the driving force presented.
Okay, so let's quickly recap. We've looked at this YouTube video by Hammer, which argues for a very specific, narrow definition of African and Pan-African. It excludes North Africans and countries like Somalia and Djibouti based on arguments about indigeneity, ancestry tracing to the Middle East Arabian Peninsula, and alleged self-identification as Arabs. This definition reserves African identity primarily for black indigenous sub-Saharan Africans, with Ethiopia and Eritrea noted as outliers who do fit, according to the video, because of how they self-identify.
Exactly. It's a perspective that fundamentally challenges broader, more inclusive definitions of African identity. And it leaves us, and you, with something important to think about. Given all the complexities, history, migration, how people see themselves, political movements, what happens when attempts are made to draw these really rigid lines around continental identity? What could be the broader implications, and how might definitions like the one in this video shape relationships and the possibility of unity among the incredibly diverse peoples across Africa in the future?